Today we're going to do something a little bit different. My name's Dr. Mike, and I'm going to be walking through a few of these formulations for Charlotte Tilbury. These are different eyeshadows, and in a minute I will show you the differences between some of these, what chemicals are combined inside of them to make them work with your makeup. Really what these are a mixture of chemicals. That's all makeup is. I realized that when Rita gave me these earlier, these are somewhat complicated formulas, and so what I will do is I will simply go through the base ingredients, and you know what the base ingredients are but on looking at your package, because the higher percentage of the mass or the weight, you might say, are going to be in the top of the list. So we're going to go through some of these, and I'll show you what they mean, why they're added, and it's also important to know that each of these chemicals that are added into a formula have a few purposes besides how it looks on your face. One is packaging. These chemicals, they have to outlast a number of different scenarios that it might be encountered in shipping and in storage. So what that means is this product has to look good. It can't separate out for some small inclusion or some imperfection cannot separate out of the product throughout its lifetime on the shelf. So all of these things are taken into account by the formulators. And as a disclosure, I am not a makeup formulator. I am simply an organic chemist who has done some type of cosmetic formulations in the past, so I have some experience with that, but this is going to be a sort of a new avenue that I'm approaching here in this type of video. I'll start with this Star Aura, and on the back it shows you what type of compounds are in each one of these 1, 2, 3, and 4 as we go around clockwise. Most all of these that I've looked at are mica based. So the question is then, what is mica? And a lot of you, and why is it used in this type of formula? So a lot of you might know what mica is, but a few things about it. Number one is this is generally not a filler. You might hear that word. That's not the correct way to think about any component that is added in these formulations. So number one, mica is going to provide a structural support for the whole entire formula, and what that is going to do is it's going to essentially be the structure of the house, so to speak. So if your house is made of concrete or wood, what have you, you're going to have these blocks or these posts that hold up the rest of the house. That is what mica does to this makeup. Okay, it adds structure, so you can build on top of that structure. Now, the other thing that mica is going to provide that's very useful for something that's going on your eyes is this type of inorganic product, or this type of inorganic chemical. It provides a sort of a glow, glitter, shimmer, and what that glitter is from when the rock or mineral is originally cut. If it's cut in a certain process rather than just ground down, there's different techniques to process mica. If it is cut in a certain way, then it can retain some of the brilliance of the actual mineral that comes natural with the mineral. And an analogy that I could use is, if you've ever seen a pearlescent car paint, like a white pearl, some of those car paints also have a mica in them to get that pearlescent, that very glowing sheen to the paint. So I'm not saying that they're the same exact thing, but I am saying that that's where some of that comes from. In looking at this Star Aura itself, I'm making sure I got that right, there's one major difference that you might find, and I'm going to see if I can zoom in here. This one on the top left is going to have a lot more sheen to it. So how do the formulators come up with that? The main ingredient that is going to give that sheen is calcium aluminum borosilicate. So what that means to me when I think about a borosilicate, I think of, and many chemists think of, immediately glass. Now, this isn't saying that there are shards of glass in your makeup, but what it is saying is that there is a mixture of chemicals that can be combined that creates a borosilicate compound, and it gives a very bright glitter, shimmering effect, very similar to glass. So that is why when you look at this closely, you're going to see a lot more glittery in this top left one. And that top left one is going to be the prime of the Star Aura. So that's the major difference between, in this palette, between the prime and also the enhanced smoke and define, is number one, you have calcium and aluminum borosilicate. So a little bit more about that calcium aluminum borosilicate is it's not going to be such a ground glass, it's more of a clay. So this type of mineral is generally made in the industry by mixing different type of clays and quartz and so on together. So you might know, if you're sort of a makeup guru, you might know of a kaolin clay. Okay, so this type of mineral that gives you that glitter is going to be probably more of the consistency of a kaolin clay than some sort of hardened ground material. Then all of these other ones are going to be sort of similar formulas. There is going to be a much different formula between this pink one, I'm calling it pink, which is an enhance, and these two down here at the bottom, smoke and define. So the major difference there is going to be in the colors. You can see that very apparently, but there's actually different chemicals that are going to be added into these two on the bottom to give you a little bit of a darker color. And then there's also other nuances in the formulas that are going to change in order to accept the formula and give you a little bit different application on your face. When you apply it, you might, for example, prefer to apply this top left one, or you might prefer to apply all of these others. And the reason that you might find that preference is because of, again, the base structural formula. I'm just going to talk about the similarities and differences in the formulas between these two different ones, so Star Aura and Eyes of a Star. Again, this is from a high level. So the biggest difference that I found in looking at these two is the one on the left, which is the Star Aura, is very much mica and inorganic based. There are some other type of components in here. For example, we do have emollients such as cetyl ethylhexanoate, which is also known as cetyl ethylhexanoate. We have humectant in all of these, which is glycerin, and other types of organic components. But when I say that the structure or the base of this one on the left is inorganic, that's a type of chemical. That means something that isn't made from an organic material. And when I say organic, that doesn't mean like it's healthy for you. That means that term organic, when I use it, just means that it could be something that is made from a petroleum-based or maybe a plant-based type product. So it would be made in a lab, synthesized in a lab, for example, not taken out of the ground. So the base structure of this Star Aura is inorganic in every formula. That is not the case with this Eyes of the Star. Two of these, which are the smoke and define of the Eyes of the Star, these are all still mica based. Okay, so we still have that structural component, but in addition to a mica based structural component in this Eyes of a Star, the smoke and define down here on the bottom, they're going to have much more of a sort of a petroleum based isn't the right word here, but I would say synthetic based materials in them. And the reason that they do that is because, hard to see from the camera, if I put it closely and maybe turn it in the light, you're going to see that these two on the bottom, are much more matte than these two on the top. Generally, a synthetic organic compound that's going to be added into a high percentage in a formula, for example in the eyes of the star, that's going to give a certain smoothness to the overall formula. Again, when I'm talking about smoothness, it's not application to your face. When I talk about smoothness here, I mean the color, the consistency of the mix. Okay, so this to me is a chemical compound. This mix is going to be smoother throughout, and that's going to give an effect of a matte. Okay, it's not a matte color. The matte effect comes from these type of synthetic based materials. For example, when I look at all of these together to compare and contrast, these two on the right, on the eyes of the star, which is smoke and define, they're going to have a high percentage of lauryl dimethicone, butylene glycol. There's some PEGs in there. PEG is basically just a polyethylene glycol polymer and so on. So all of these compounds together, these are essentially a mixture of what we might call an emulsifier. Basically it smooths out a formula. It gives a sort of a silky feel and a smooth feel when it goes onto your face. Many of the compounds do that. In addition, this is going to give you a matte finish. The biggest difference that I found in all of these is that these two products here on the bottom of the eyes of the star, the smoke and define, are extremely different formulas. So if you prefer, for example, this palette, if you really love this palette, the Star Aura, you may or may not like how these apply to your face, and vice versa. If you really like these two on the bottom, these are kind of their own group of chemical formulas, and the rest of these 6 are going to be more similar to each other. Looking at the eyes of the star palette on the right, which is a little bit darker color, you see that on the bottom here, these two compounds are going to be more matte, and then on the top, they're going to have more of a shimmer, more of a glitter than the ones on the bottom. And those two on the top will look very similar. It's hard to see this on camera, but the two on the top of this one on the right look very similar to everything on the left, essentially. So I'm going to talk about why that is. And again, I'm going to try to give you a more bird's eye view here. I'm going to use this very scientific tool, which is my phone camera, and show you if I can get this. So those two on the top have more of a glitter effect, and the two on the bottom are more matte. Where that glitter effect comes from is a mixture of mica and CTRL ethylhexanoate. So where the mica might provide a glow or a sheen, the mixture of the mica with the cetyl ethylhexanoate or the CTRL ethylhexanoate will provide a more of an oily look. So you have sort of a glitter glow and you have more of an oily look. And then with the other components that are added into there, you're going to definitely have more of I would call this a glitter or a sheen to it, what have you. Moving on to specifically the smoke and define down here on this eyes of a star, these are your matte colors. The differences between this and all of the others is not the mica. The mica remains the same as the base structural component, but the functional component, which provides a somewhat of a structure, of course, but the functional component is going to give the overall look of the makeup. So you can see in the top sort of a glitter or a sheen that the CTRL ethylhexanoate is going to provide. It's more uneven. Okay, and what I mean by uneven is when the light reflects off of small micro and nano structures in the surface, the light's going to refract and bounce off differently in this top colors, okay? These top formulas, rather. In the bottom, that's not so much the case. So in the bottom, what we have is a lauryl dimethicone rather than a cetyl ethylhexanoate, and that lauryl dimethicone smooths out the formula, makes a more matte color, and allows the light to reflect more evenly across the formulation. So each of these has a mass on the front of the product, and Rita was explaining to me that she and some other people might think that there's some ulterior motive going on with the mass or something, and I want to encourage you really to not look at so much the mass, but look at a volume of the product. So for example, when I look at this palette, and I don't have the other example here with me, maybe an older palette that had a heavier weight or heavier mass of product, when I look at both of them and I compare the sizes of this square basically that holds the formula, that holds the chemical, it's the same volume. I mean, I didn't do a specific test, but it's the same size, it's the same volume. So what I would like to say about that is each one of these formulations is different, meaning they have different chemicals combined in them. So each box, if you consider that little rectangle a box, you would know that from a everyday life perspective, you could have, for example, a cardboard box that has styrofoam in it, and the same size cardboard box that has sand in it. Each cardboard box, you have the same amount of stuff, but one is going to weigh more than the other. Okay, so I wouldn't feel like you're being cheated if you have less or more product in the box. I would encourage you just to look at the quality of the formula, because that's really what the formulators are paying attention to. They're going to pay more attention to things like how long does your makeup last, how long does it stay well in the package, and how does it apply to your face, what kind of colors that there are. That's really what they're concerned about. They're not going to be so concerned about pinching pennies on giving you less or more product. So that is actually chemical density. That's something that doesn't belong here, but that's what gives you. So again, this is Dr. Mike. I had fun going through some of these Hollywood flawless eye filter formulas with you today. Hopefully I can do something more technical and more simple with some type of skincare, so I can show you exactly how those compounds interact with your layers of your skin. So there's more good things to come. Again, this is more of a complicated formula, but it's my first time trying this out. So I look forward to seeing you again.